or comments or abuse or critique or whatever you want is good. Or that's okay too. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Bill. I'm curious, what do you believe are the most important factors for success in the Keystone Oil campaign?
Well, the first thing to be said is success is extremely relative here. Environmentalists only win temporary victories, and I'm afraid this one's going to be more temporary than most. I think we may well lose this particular fight even in the next few months. The oil industry has fought back with hundreds of millions of dollars in TV ads, and I'm afraid that the Congress and the President are likely to buckle in the face of all that. That said, it was a good thing to have done, and is a good thing to be doing, in part because we really did figure out some of the things that we'll need to do in order to be effective going forward. One is to be very united. All the environmental groups and a lot of other kind of people work very well together in this, instead of fragmenting their efforts and each doing, and going in different directions. It was really good. And we had strong involvement of many different kinds of people. The Indigenous Environmental Network was really key, all the Indians on both sides of the border, because this thing is such an atrocity up in Canada. They've just wrecked a huge part of northern Canada doing this, and land that once, of course, belonged to Native people. And then we worked really well with ranchers and farmers and things down in places like Nebraska, where the pipeline was going to go, or may still go, who were outraged about it all. And we kept a very positive viewpoint the whole time. Like, a couple of months after those sit-in, we went back to Washington, and this time we encircled the White House with people. But it wasn't like angry, neither was the sit-in. It wasn't like angry. It was, all the signs were just quotes from Barack Obama in 2008 about how he was going to deal with climate change and things. And so we were just, it was sort of hopeful in its way. That may have been symbolized. The other thing that was interesting about those sit-ins that we did, the other thing I told people besides that it shouldn't be young people who had to go get arrested, the other thing was, I said, if you want to come do this, we need you to be wearing your Sunday best when you come. Okay, we need you in a necktie or a dress or whatever. Not, as you can tell, because I'm a big necktie guy, but because we wanted a visual way to say something that I think is really important, which is that in this work we're doing, all the people you'll see today, the people from ACE and so on and so forth, we're not the radicals in this fight. All we'd like is a world that works a little bit like the one we were born onto. The radicals work at oil companies and coal companies, because they're doing the most radical thing that any humans have ever done. They're altering the chemical composition of the atmosphere, even though scientists have told them that it's going to be a disaster. In order to make money, they're going ahead and doing it. And that's the most, that's, it's the kind of, it's so radical, it's almost hard for us to sort of imagine it. It's the kind of thing, if you were having, the next James Bond movie or something, the villain would be like, give me $1 trillion, or I will alter the chemical composition of the atmosphere, but since it's, powerful people who are doing this, we don't even think twice about it. But that's what they are, great radicals. And showing that was important.
Aside from raising awareness, how do you think people like teens or anyone should take action, I guess?
Right. Well, so raising awareness is sort of part of, is in its sense deeply taking action, okay? Here's the thing. You all know a lot of things you can do in your local school, in your house, in your community, right? Like by now you've all pestered your parents to make sure that you have the right light bulbs in, and that you're not driving a semi-military vehicle to go to the grocery store, and all those sort of things. We're past that, or at least we know how to be past that. And those are important things to do. The trouble is, given the amount of time we have to deal with climate change, we're not going to win this battle just by doing those things. It won't add up fast enough. If we had 100 years, that's how it should work. We should work by addition. You find out about this and you do good things, and your brother-in-law sees it and he changes his house, and then 3 people down the street figure that out, and they work at it, and slowly we change our zoning codes and build. Given 100 years, that's how it would work, and it's really how it would best work, that kind of slow, graceful transition. You know, that's how change should happen in human societies. Unfortunately, physics and chemistry aren't giving us that kind of time. So along with working by addition like that, we also have to figure out how to work by multiplication, which means politics. It means changing the basic set of rules under which we work. The most important rule that we have to change, and it has to be done in Congress and then at the UN, you know, is to set a price on carbon to reflect the damage that it does in the atmosphere. If you think about it, the reason that we're in this fix is that the fossil fuel industry is the only industry in the world that gets to put its waste out for free, okay? So, like, last night I had an excellent dinner in one of these Japanese restaurants just across the street over here in that little mini mall across the way, okay? And there were like 8 or 9 restaurants there. It was hard to choose where to eat. Each of those guys would make more money if, at the end of the night, they just took all their waste and dumped it out in the middle of the parking lot or out in the middle of the street, okay? Because they wouldn't have to pay someone to cart it away. If they were able to work like oil companies, that's what they do. The problem is that if you did that, a week later, this neighborhood would be overrun with rats, and you'd be getting, you know, plague or leptospirosis or something like that. Which is why 150 years ago we said, no, you can't just dump all your waste out in the middle of the street. You got to find someone to take care of it in a responsible way, and it's going to cost some money, and that's how it works, okay? The only people that don't have to do that are the fossil fuel industry. What we need to do is charge them for that, and if we do, the price of fossil fuel will go up to the point where we will quickly find the wide array of other substitutes that we need, you know? That's the most important policy change, but it only will happen when we have enough political power to beat the fossil fuel industry, or at least to make them want to negotiate a little bit, okay? Because at the moment, they win everything. They have all the power, right? And so it's very hard to get change on these fundamental ways. So raising awareness is a deeply consequential act in that way. And one of the things we've said, you know, you saw those pictures from, you know, we've done many of these big days of action. Some of you helped with the big moving planet thing we did last fall. It was mostly around bicycles and things like that. It was beautiful all over the world. But I think this thing in May, there'll be a lot of that, a lot of the usual kind of upbeat and happy. Some places, people are going to be a little angrier this time, you know. It's going to be a little edgier, and I think almost that that's appropriate. You know, when they had the floods in Pakistan two years ago, summer of 2010, it was almost unbelievable what happened. They'd never had rain anywhere near like that amounts. The region up in the Khyber Pass, top of Pakistan, that normally gets 3 feet of rain in a year, got 12 feet of rain in a week, okay? That's what's possible now in the new kind of world that we've created with these new kind of rules. And hence the Indus River flooded to the point where 20 million people were out of their homes. We got a lot of friends and colleagues in Pakistan. They're, you know, they'll be a little bitter, I think, when they do this thing on May 5th, and I think that's okay. I think people need to start understanding that this is for real and serious. Other places it'll be lots of fun as usual. I just talked to our climbing team who are going up to Dana Pass up in the Sierras, Dana Glacier up in the Sierras, a glacier that's, you know, like a half the size that it used to be, melting fast, and they're going to put this huge banner, 100,000 square foot banner up across it, and the question was what we should write on it, you know, and something like "Stop Global Warming" or something. And I said, maybe, are there any Wizard of Oz fans in here? I said maybe we should just write at the end, it's just, you know, the most important lines from Wizard of Oz, just say, "I'm melting on the glacier," you know. So that's what it'll say, I think.
Thank you, Bill. I want to thank you not just for raising awareness, but also inspiring action. Mountain View City Library, which is just north of here, chose your book Earth for their community read, and they for the month of last November, and they organized 20 different colloquiums and activities that were suggested by your book and to discuss your book, from electric cars to
Fantastic.
energy alternatives, etc. So thank you for that. And I'd like to know what is the website we can go to see all of those pictures and find out more about your main event?
The very good thing about our organization is it has exactly the same name as our website. So if you go to 350.org, you're all set. It's funny, we weren't really thinking about, that when we did it, but it turned out to be a smart piece of organizing, because if you're looking down a list of environmental organizations online, you see a long list in the Sierra Club and whatever, but just because the name is 350.org, computers automatically highlight it so you can click through it immediately to the websites. We were very strategic and savvy, I must say. It's good fun.
How have you seen the green movement evolve over the years, and with respect to changes?
How have I seen the green movement evolve over the years and involvement of young people? Well, let's think about, in many ways, the high point of the green movement in this country and around the world in certain ways was pretty near the beginning. 1970 was the first Earth Day in America. Okay, so more than, 42 years ago now. First Earth Day, 20 million Americans were out in the streets that day. That was, given the population of the time, that was 1 in 10 Americans. Okay, so a huge number of people. And that made an impression on politicians. And in the next 3 or 4 years, they passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all the laws that are that cleaned up the air in California and cleaned up the water in the Great Lakes and protected, the bald eagle and all these kind of things, the California condor. That was the high water mark, because after that, the kind of green movement went to sleep a little bit. And everybody said, well, we've won this battle, or, the courts will look out for us, or whatever. And everybody kind of, that's why we're trying to build this movement again, And it's hard because there's a lot of other things that everybody's got to work on, and sometimes they're more immediate or seem more immediate than things like climate. But also just because we've gotten used to the idea that someone else is going to take care of, and all of us, I know I felt like the day that Barack Obama got elected, I was like, oh, okay, I can relax for a little while. This guy will say, well, you know what, that's not how it works. Even good people who say the right things, they're under such pressure all the time from, think about how much money there is in, say, the fossil fuel industry. Exxon made more money each of the last 5 years than any company in the history of money, okay? That just gives them so much power. And we're never going to have money like that, so we have to figure out other currencies to work in. So, passion and spirit and creativity. And sometimes, we have to put our bodies on the line like people in other movements have had to do. This is no different in that sense from the civil rights movement or from Gandhi's, Gandhi teaching us all how to do this kind of work across India in the days before independence. The only difference in this case is that we have to work quickly. The civil rights movement, Dr. King, my great hero, always said, whenever he gave a speech, he said he used an important line that you have to think about a little bit to figure out what it means, but it was a quote from an abolitionist in Theodore Parker in the 19th century. It said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Okay? So It takes a long time to get where we're going, but we're going to get there, okay? The universe is headed in the direction of justice, and I think what Martin Luther King and his people felt like was that they were just speeding up that process, pointing out where it needed to go. The trouble with climate change is the arc of the physical universe, by comparison, is kind of short, and it seems to bend toward heat, and so we got to work really fast. And if we don't get it, I wish I could just tell you guys, relax. Your job is to hang out here in high school and go to college and get the best education you can, and then get a job, and you'll be leading the world in 15, 20 years, and you'll be in a position to do stuff and whatever. That's really how it should work. But we're going to have to ask you, while you're doing all that other stuff, going to college and getting a job, we're also going to have to ask you to be full-on citizens, fully involved in this kind of fight, because otherwise I'm afraid the world that you're going to have to go, be leaders in 30 or 20 or whatever years is not going to be that good a world, So, wish I could say otherwise. But, and as I say, to the role of young people, look, around the world, it's young people who are being the leaders on this thing. Partly that's because when you get to the developing world, everybody's young. You get to places in Africa or Asia. The average age is like 24 or something, which means that half the people are younger than that. So it just stands to reason. But everywhere, including this country, and those of you who got to go to Power Shift know just how amazing it is to be there and see 10,000 young people from all over the country who are like, yeah, we're going to get it done. And it's certainly the thing that keeps me cheerful and going.
Great, we have time for one last question. I'm so sorry to cut it off, but
They run a tight ship at this place.
You mentioned the urgency of getting things done, and so are you, and then you mentioned Sierra Club and Earth Day and what Al Gore is trying to do. So are you joining forces with them?
We all now work together, and that was one of the best things about this whole fight about this Keystone Pipeline. Okay, I spent 3 days in jail in Washington, and the guy in the cell next to me was an old friend of mine, a 70-year-old guy who at the first Earth Day was one of the guys who was leading things, and then founded the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is, along with the Sierra Club, one of the oldest, biggest, whatever, environmental groups. And he was always been very establishment environmentalist, and things. But he, at a certain point, he just decided we're not getting action fast enough, and we need to work, all of us, to kind of, together. And it was funny, we were there in jail, and he managed to sort of smuggle out a note to the reporter. And what he said in the note was, really stuck in my head. He said, I've held a lot of important positions in this town. He'd been chair of the President's Council on Environmental Quality, he'd been the dean at Yale, he'd been, I've held a lot of important positions, but none of them seem as important as the one I'm in right now, Not you have to be in jail, but to be just engaged in this movement, in this fight, understanding that it really is kind of a fight about power and that kind of thing, and that it won't be solved just by doing kind of easy, obvious things. It's got to be solved partly by standing up. So that was really, to me, very moving. And yeah, we work together and the part that we bring to it, since I'm the, 350.org, since I'm the only old guy there, everybody else is your guys' age, The part we bring to it to help the Sierra Club and all these guys is, like, my crew knows how to do everything with the web, and they, just set up websites, do this, that, and which, like the Sierra Club would be not so good at, and so it's, we all work together and it works well. Not well enough yet, but we're trying, and we really look forward to seeing you guys. You guys will all figure out the things that you're particularly good at and how you want to be involved and how it all sticks together. But we'll look forward to seeing you on May 5th and see pictures of you doing something cool for that day. And one of the reasons it's so important that you do it is that there'll be other people looking at those pictures from around the world, especially in the poorest parts of the world, and for them to see that people in the rich parts of the world, some of them anyway, understand that there's a big problem and want to do something about it. That to them is extraordinarily important. You know, when your colleagues, people your age in the Maldives, go online and look and see that people in Silicon Valley at the center of the world's economy are charged up about the same things and taking some responsibility and doing some stuff, for them that's like, okay, this is good, we can make this work.
Great.
Thank you.
Another round of